Hi, everybody. Welcome to the From My Uncle podcast. I'm Dave Monaco, Meyer, family head of school here at Parish Episcopal School. I'm thrilled to be joined by Julie Lythcott Haims. She's here today visiting Parish and the Dallas community to help us kick off Centered, a new partnership that we are about to unveil with the Grant Halliburton Foundation. And we're so excited to have had her here today to speak to a panel speak on a panel with about 85 guests over lunch, and then she'll be here tonight to speak to members of the community. You'll be able to access all of that content. So this is a podcast mini. We're going to really refine our conversation and talk about
We're going to go off-road?
We're going to go off-road
Okay, we're going off-road.
on the topic of passion.
Right on.
And something that we think is really important both in the education space and then where Julie does a lot of her writing and thinking about in terms of how parents cultivated in their parents and their students.
Kids.
Yeah. So welcome to
Thank
Dallas.
you.
We're glad to have
Thanks
you
for
here.
having me. I'm delighted to be here at Parish.
And
What an amazing community you have, I just
Thank
have
you.
to say.
Thank
I'm
you.
really, really impressed. And you guys are just really quite ahead of the curve here in terms of the progress we need to make around offering rigor and balancing that with wellness.
For sure, and that is, of course, where passion goes, because for me, that tipping point is somewhere maybe just after sixth grade. And people say, like, what do you really want to get done at Parish? Well, I want our 18-year-olds to be as excited to come to school as our 8-year-olds are. Right?
Yeah.
See?
If only.
Yeah. So what
If only.
happens?
Instead, they're tired and
Yes.
burned out.
What happens after sixth grade where school becomes a job, a transactional
Yeah.
experience, and the passion just goes
away.
right out of it?
Well, I mean, what happens is their energy and light as humans gets snuffed out because we sort of put them through a process that treats them like little robots. We, as I like to say, we arrive them at this future we have in mind for them, which is a very passive word intentionally, because the kid ends up feeling like a passive participant in their own life.
Yep.
And what's the point of having passion if everyone else is telling you what matters and what you have to study and what your future should look like? So we're doing it. We are, without intending to, squelching the animated life force in them,
Right.
which will allow them to discover what their passion is, and they have it naturally as children.
And there's lots of participants in that we. There's the we college preparatory schools.
Yeah.
There's the we parents. There's the we higher education.
Absolutely.
Like there's lots of people comprising that
Yeah.
we. You don't even like the word passion. You suggest. So tell me a little bit about that when you think about the passion of your young person. You're a mom of two,
Yeah.
so when you think about that, you have a dancer.
Yeah.
You have
But
an intellectual, right?
A couple things. So the first is, of course, passion is a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what the average high schooler is passionate about is the fellow high schooler,
Yeah,
in
right.
their math class,
That's right.
and that's natural
Social,
and
yeah,
normal.
social environment.
Yeah, I mean, they're learning, they're discovering themselves, and they're in relationships for the first time. It's very healthy for a 16-year-old to be passionate about another human. But we've made it the norm that every kid graduating from a place like this has to have found their passion. And we find your passion, kid, quick.
Yep.
Why? Because colleges want to see it. So find your passion, which is a deeply personal thing. It really is sort of what matters to me so much that I want to devote my life to it, my one precious life. We've made it this utilitarian thing. Find your passion, kid, like it's a book hiding on a bookshelf. Go find it so that you can impress a college with it. And I think most kids haven't found I think most of us, let's put it in our generation, we're Gen X. Most of us hadn't found our passion by the time we were 17 or 18.
No.
We found it in college, or we found it in the workplace, or we went to the wrong graduate program. We went to grad school, we hated it, and that allowed us to finally say, you know what I'm really passionate about? It's this other thing.
Yeah.
People find it. We want people to find it. It's the rudder that determines your direction in life. But to normalize the finding of passion by the time you're 18, I think it's really, we're trying to give kids something we think the colleges expect them to have, and I'd like to upend the whole system.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Because you talked earlier about in our larger group about this notion of caged enrichment, right? So you really and the power of play. Like school is essentially suffocating to the true exploration of passion. Because to a great degree we teach subjects, for example, most of us in disciplines.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't see interconnectedness as well as we should. We teach the history class in a segment of 80 minutes at our school at a particular day of the week. Our courses last a set amount of time.
Yeah.
There's just not enough natural exploration time to explore deeply in school, what we call voice and choice, where a student can kind of pick and choose where they're going. And that's very similar to what you talked to about parents. Right? In terms of how they set the same, in some cases, suffocating structure
At
away
home.
from the school,
Exactly.
which denudes the opportunity to go to points of exploration and passion.
And then we wonder why kids emerge from childhood depressed and anxious. The evidence is so clear and so everywhere. Let me tell you something. I was recently giving a high school assembly, and I was telling the kids what passion actually looks like, because we can articulate for them, passion is something you care about and you really focus on and you hone deeply and you explore it in the curriculum and extracurricularly and so on. But I was trying to tell them basically how it feels, but by describing what it looks like when you see it in someone else.
Yeah.
I said, passion, when someone has a passion about something, their eyes dance. Their eyes dance.
Mm-hmm.
When you're with someone who's really passionate about a particular topic, even if it's some weird, obscure thing you yourself have no interest in, no knowledge about, you can't help but be engaged because they're so delighted,
That's right.
because it is their passion. That's what we're hoping our kids will discover, that
Yep.
thing that just lights them up and makes them go. And even if it's wacky, weird, we don't know what job they're going to get with it, we as parents have to say, you know what, that's who my kid is. That's what they love. As Bill Damon says, I quote him in my book, he's a Stanford professor and he writes about adolescence. He's in the School of Education. He says, you can't give your kid a passion anymore than you can give them a personality.
Yeah.
You have to, though, pay attention to the spark of their interests, and then as parents we can fan the flames. Fan the flames. In other words, look for the evidence, and then whatever means you have, if you can afford to give them a summer school opportunity or a trip somewhere, or give them a book on the subject, introduce them to somebody, that's what it means to fan the flames. But we're not giving them the passion or forcing them to have the passion. We're just supporting the evidence of passion that we see.
Yeah, and as we talked about downstairs, about this notion of authentic parenting. So sometimes what a parent will do is they'll throw a million passions in front of the kid. And you're going to piano lessons. I've got you set up to go to WOGA, which is a after-school, gymnastics physical program here. I've got you going to this lesson or that lesson. And it becomes really what the parent is seeking to pursue. This notion of really letting it authentically emanate from the child.
Yeah.
And then backfilling it in, even if it's a little bit off course from what you thought it should be or might be, is one of the great suggestions that you could give a parent, right?
I mean, the whole notion of off course is another phrase that we just have to eject from childhood. Childhood
whose course, right? Whose course are we talking about?
Well, life is a wide open
That's
landscape.
right. Yep.
What my sadness, I'm a former college dean, and I had so many students who were on a well-worn path. They were going to be STEM or econ or pre-med or pre-law. And why? Because someone told them they should be, or they had some inkling of an interest and someone decided that equaled medicine or business. And I was trying to get them up out of the trenches. There's security in the trench because there are people in front of you and people behind you, and it's well-worn. It feels like, well, this is where people go. I'm trying to get them up out of the trench, look around at the landscape of life and opportunity there, and literally, in the correct usage of the word, an infinite number of careers and jobs and so on. And when a human does work that they're good at and they love, that's when they thrive. It isn't about how much money you make. You can make enough money to support yourself doing almost anything. When the work is intrinsically rewarding, it becomes its own reward. It is by definition its own reward. You don't need all the money they have to pay you to do the jobs people actually hate to do, and that's where the high salaries come.
Yeah. So parents, are you allowing your child's authentic passion to really drive where there may be time away from school goes, or is it being scripted based on what you see their peers doing or what you see your peers in the parental set doing? I'll tell you very concretely how we as a school are attacking this, because for us, whether it's our 3rd and 4th grade students getting to do passion projects, which is essentially just a fancy way of saying unscripted time to pursue something that's of deep interest to them, or our upper school rover team, robotics team. I walked you through the den, right?
Amazing.
Where it doesn't necessarily fit into a class period. We are looking to break apart time structures. So while we play by the rules that the colleges have placed upon us now for the necessary credits that have to be taken, they're not going to go away anytime soon. We are going to be continuing to try to find ways to infuse in our schedule periods of time that are more open for our kids to explore. On Monday, in fact, next week, our seniors are leaving campus for the next 5 weeks in Parish Bridge. They are all over the city, spending anywhere from 15 to 50 hours in professional or nonprofit shadowing, taking an online course in an area of interest to them, doing academic coursework in an area of interest to them. We felt that was a better way for them to spend the last 5
Wow.
weeks here rather than suffering under senioritis.
Yeah.
You see, so
Get out
we're
there.
going to continue to
Beautiful.
be looking for these play spaces for our kids within the normal confines and structures of school that evoke authentic passions.
Yeah.
That place where God's gifts can be deployed to meet a need in the community, in the world, right?
Absolutely.
That's what we're all about.
You know, sometimes kids and parents don't know what they're passionate about. So I will get that question from either set. You know, how do I help my kid discover their passion? Or as a kid might say, I don't know what I'm passionate about. And so to them, I want to offer this. There's this concept of flow, pioneered by an Eastern European thinker named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
It's well done with that
Thank you.
pronunciation.
It's the
Try to
equivalent-
spell
try to
that,
spell
my
it.
friends.
It's the equivalent of musicians being in the groove,
Yes.
athletes being in the zone.
Right.
For all of us,
Yep.
we have access to this thing called flow, which is
Yes.
a state of being where we're so enamored of our task. We're challenged by it, but not terrified.
Yep.
You know, the skills required are slightly beyond our capacity, so we're learning as we do, but we're diving in deeper.
Yes.
You lose track of time.
Yes, right.
You lose track of a sense of hunger or thirst. It's that thing you do where you look up hours later and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe how much
Can't
time has
believe it.
passed."
Exactly.
That's evidence that when you're in flow is evidence that you're doing something that enchants and delights you.
Yes.
And so as parents, we can pay attention to when does our kids seem really
When
lost
they lose
in
themselves.
an activity.
Absolutely.
And often for kids, it's something like Lego or model building. And you think, that's not useful. What are they going to do with that? What are they going to do with that? The people hiring engineers, they want kids who tinkered and made things as a child
Yes.
on their own volition, not because some enrichment class told them to, but because they were drawn to it and couldn't extricate themselves from it.
Yeah, and for the parish parents who've been reading about this whole notion of voice and choice, when we talk about in reimagining our program, how to bring more voice and choice to the learning experience, that is exactly what we're talking about. It's the key or the doorway to flow. It's the ability for a child to say, rather than just following the adult curated curriculum, which is what our schools have been for time immemorial, the adult set time structures, how do I have some opportunity to decide with my voice and what I choose, how I come to understand content? How do I demonstrate my mastery to you in ways that are unique to my gifts rather than in the standard form that you're asking 18 people in this course to do that? And you know, adults in their work world get this. You don't want to walk in and have the boss put a stack of papers on top of your desk and tell you that you were to work on these first today and have these back to me by 11 o'clock, right? That is seen as dehumanizing, stripping you of emotion and lacking in any sort of creativity, right? So we see that in our workspace, but we don't understand why we want to tinker with it in the school space.
Yeah.
No, go march the steps, do what your teacher tells you, follow the rules, study your review sheet, memorize it, spit it back on the test. You know, it's just all this rule-based area. So for us, voice and choice in the school environment is something that we aspire for our kids, and that we're working hard to try to
I'm
try
having
to cultivate.
a moment right now.
I'm sorry.
No, and don't be sorry.
It's a good moment.
Yeah, I'm wishing that every kid
Mm-hmm.
had a chance to be in the presence of the educators here at Parish.
Mm-hmm.
You're articulating things
Right.
most leaders in K-12 can't or won't.
Yeah.
And imagine how childhood could be
What school
restored
could feel like.
to
Sure.
a time of life of exploration
Yep.
and play where a young person feels loved and supported, where their life outside the classroom is as joyful as inside the classroom. You know, I'm just imagining, I'm going into this space of if only, you know, Dave's way, if only there were more,
We could realize it.
you know, folks like you who could find the courage and the support of their trustees and the support of the parent community and so on, and the support of the foundation like Grant Halliburton, you know, where you've all partnered and you've said something
Let's
has to
figure
change.
it out. Yeah.
Something has to change. The
Yep.
current system, the traditional system, no longer supports kids.
Yeah, what it would look like is, again, your 18-year-olds would be excited to come to school
Oh,
as
my
your
goodness.
8-year-olds. And we're far from there.
Yeah.
But I think the question ultimately is your school community at least going to endeavor to try? And
Yeah.
we've used to your present literary place in your career, we've used this year the hero's journey, this notion that this unknown world, there's no certainty of what the treasure will look like at the end. There are no clear answers or pathways to get there. But if we sit in the known world, if we just sit here and let this world happen to us, we're not going to realize change. So at least at Parish, while we have no monopoly on the answers, and in fact have a program that in many ways would look kind of similar to some other schools, we are asking the right questions and are about 5 years into
I think you
to
are.
trying to figure it out. So thanks for joining us. It's
Absolutely.
been great to have you here.
I love being here.
And we will urge everyone to follow Julie on her Instagram, on her social media presence, to go get her books, to read about them, to watch her TED Talk, which has at this point over 3 million views. So she's saying something that's connecting with the audience, and so spend some time ruminating on what she has to share with us. But it's been a pleasure to have her here. Thank you
Thank you so much.
We'll see you next time on From My Angle Podcast.